If you don't cover what your brother owes, I will make sure everyone in your field knows you can't be trusted with money." That was the voicemail my mother left me on a Tuesday morning while I was sitting in my car in the parking garage at work, coffee going cold in my hand, staring at my phone like it just bitten me. I didn't go inside right away. I just sat there. The garage was dim and smelled like exhaust and wet concrete, and I listened to it again. Her voice was steady, not crying, not panicking. Steady, like she had rehearsed it. I deleted it. Then I opened my call log and screenshot the timestamp. That was the moment I stopped trying to fix things and started building a way out. Let me back up because none of this started on a Tuesday. I'm the oldest of 3. My mother had my brother when I was 4, and my younger sister when I was 6. By the time I was 10, the family dynamic was already set in stone in a way I didn't have words for yet. My brother was the one who needed protecting. My sister was the one who needed encouraging. I was the one who was fine. I was always fine. I put myself through college on a combination of scholarships, work study, and a part-time job at a hotel front desk that had me starting shifts at 5 in the morning twice a week. I graduated with a degree in accounting, passed my CPA exam on the first try, and got hired at a mid-sized firm in Columbus that specialized in forensic accounting. If you don't know what that is, the short version is, I investigate financial fraud for a living. I look at numbers and find the places where someone is lying. I was good at it. I am good at it. My brother dropped out of community college after 1 semester, which my mother explained as he just needs more time to find his direction. He spent the next several years finding his direction through a series of business ideas that never quite launched. A food truck, a landscaping company, an online resale shop. Each one needed a little startup money, and each one quietly folded, and each time my mother called me to help make up the difference. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he was trying. I told myself that family takes care of family, which is something my mother said so often it started to feel less like a value and more like a password. The amount I sent over 4 years was not small. I kept a spreadsheet because that is what I do. It came to just under $22,000. Loans, I called them in my head. Gifts in practice. He never paid back a single dollar, and I never asked directly, because asking directly led to my mother calling me cold and my brother going quiet for weeks in a way that somehow became my fault. Then he started the LLC. He called it a logistic consulting firm, which I think meant he had a business card and a website and a plan to connect small businesses with shipping vendors. He was excited about it in a way I hadn't seen him excited about anything in a while, so I let myself feel cautiously hopeful. He asked me if he could use my address for the registered agent paperwork because he was technically still living at my mother's house and wanted the business to look more established. I said yes. I told him to have the mail forwarded to me so I could pass anything along. What I did not say, because it did not occur to me that I needed to say it, was, do not sign my name on anything. 4 months later, I got a letter from a supplier in Cincinnati. It was addressed to me by name, in my capacity as a signatory on a purchase agreement for approximately $14,000 in logistics software and hardware. The agreement had my name on it. The signature on it was not mine, but it was close enough to make my stomach drop. He had forged my signature. I called him before I called anyone else. That was my first mistake, or maybe it was my last one in a long line of them. I asked him directly, "Did you sign my name on a contract?" And he said, after a pause that lasted too long, that he had just been trying to get the business off the ground, and he thought I would have agreed anyway, so it wasn't really a big deal. I told him it was fraud. I told him that quietly and clearly and without raising my voice, because I was at my desk at work, and also because I was so far past the kind of anger that yells. He told my mother before I hung up the phone. She called me an hour later, not to apologize, to explain. He had made a mistake, she said, but I needed to understand the pressure he was under. The supplier was already threatening collections. If I didn't take responsibility for the agreement, his credit would be destroyed. His business would be finished before it started. She needed me to contact the supplier and work out a payment plan. I asked her if she understood what she was asking me to do. She said she understood that I had always been the strong one and that right now my family needed that strength. I told her I needed to think about it and I would call her back. I did not call her back that night. I sat in my apartment and I opened my laptop and I looked at the purchase agreement again, which I had photographed before I did anything else. I looked at my name on it. I looked at the signature. I thought about what I would tell a client if they brought me a document like this. I would tell them that someone had committed forgery and that they had legal options. I called my attorney the next morning. Not a friend, not a family member, an actual attorney I had retained 2 years earlier for a real estate matter, and kept on retainer because I had learned by then that having an attorney is not paranoid, it is just sensible. I walked her through the situation. She confirmed what I already knew. My brother had forged my signature on a legally binding document without my authorization, which constituted fraud and potentially identity theft under Ohio law. I was not liable for the agreement, But I needed to document everything and I needed to act carefully. I asked her what carefully meant. She said it meant not tipping anyone off until I was ready. That night I started a folder on my computer. I titled it Nothing. No label, no date, just a folder. Inside it I put the photograph of the purchase agreement, the timeline of every financial transfer I had made to my brother over 4 years with the corresponding bank records, the voicemail my mother had left me, and a log of every conversation I could reconstruct from memory with approximate dates. Then I did nothing visible for 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks I went to work. I ate lunch at my desk most days. I talked to my mother twice on the phone and said I was still thinking things over and that I needed more time. She accepted this with a patience that I recognized, later, as confidence. She assumed I would come around. I always had before. What she did not know was that I had also, during those 3 weeks, quietly applied for 2 remote positions at forensic accounting firms outside Ohio. One in Denver, one in Austin. I had a first-round interview for the Denver role before my mother left the voicemail. I had a second-round interview scheduled for the week after. I had also spent one afternoon going through every account, utility, subscription, and financial instrument that had my mother's house address attached to it, and began the process of changing them one by one to my apartment address, or to a P.O. box I rented so that nothing important would go anywhere I couldn't access it. I was not planning revenge. I want to be clear about that. I was planning exit. There is a difference. The voicemail changed the timeline, not the destination. When she said she would make sure everyone in my field knew I couldn't be trusted with money, I understood 2 things simultaneously. First, that she was not going to back down. Second, that she had now put a threat in writing, or close enough to it, and that I had a recording. I called my attorney the morning after and told her about the voicemail. She said, "Save it, don't respond to it, and let me know when you're ready to move." I said, "I think I'm getting close." The second round interview went well. The Denver firm made me an offer 11 days after the voicemail. The salary was higher than what I was making. The work was similar. The city was 1,200 miles away. I accepted on a Thursday afternoon and told no one. The following Monday, I went into my supervisor's office and gave 4 weeks' notice. She was sorry to lose me and genuinely warm about it, and I felt a small pang of something that wasn't quite guilt but was adjacent to it, because I liked my job and I liked her, and leaving still felt like loss even when it was right. I had not yet told my mother I was leaving the state. I had not told my brother. I had not told my sister, who was not involved in any of this, but who was also not in the habit of keeping things from our mother. So telling her felt like a risk I wasn't ready to take. I started packing the apartment slowly, the way you do when you don't want anyone who might visit to notice. Books into boxes that lived in my closet, kitchen items I rarely used, winter clothes I wouldn't need until I got to Colorado. Each box sealed and stacked quietly, a little at a time. The Thursday before my last week at work, I sat down and typed a letter to the supplier in Cincinnati, not to accept responsibility, to inform them that my signature on the purchase agreement was forged without my knowledge or consent, that I was not a party to the contract, and that I was prepared to provide documentation supporting. I attached a copy of the agreement with the signature flagged, a notarized statement from my attorney, and a copy of my driver's license for comparison. I also sent a copy to my brother's email with my attorney CC'd, and a brief note that said I was not going to cover this debt, that the signature was not mine, and that any further contact from him or anyone acting on his behalf regarding this matter should be directed to my attorney. I did not send anything to my mother yet. The response from the supplier came within 48 hours. They thanked me for the documentation and said they would be following up with the actual signatory directly. My brother called me that same evening, twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. His first message was confused. His second message was angry. He said I had thrown him under the bus, that I was being vindictive, that family was supposed to handle things privately. My mother called the next morning. I picked up because I wanted to hear what she said. She told me that what I had done was cruel. She said I had gone behind everyone's back. She said I had embarrassed my brother with a formal legal letter when this could have been handled quietly. She said she raised me better than this. I let her finish. Then I told her that the signature was forged, that I had not authorized it, that I was not legally responsible for the debt, that I had done what any reasonable person with documentation in front of them would do. She said, "Leads and family are 2 different things." I said I understood and that I loved her and that I was moving to Denver. She went silent for long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "What?" I told her I had accepted a position in Colorado and that I was leaving in 2 weeks. I told her my new address would be a P.O. box for the time being while I got settled. I told her I hoped she and my brother and my sister were okay, and I meant it. She told me I was running away. I didn't argue with her. There's a version of leaving that looks like running. I know that. But there's also a version that just looks like leaving, and only you can know which one it is when you're the one doing it. I packed the last of the apartment in a week. I hired movers for the furniture. The morning they came, I walked through each empty room the way you do when you're trying to memorize something, not because you'll miss it exactly, but because it was yours and it won't be anymore. I had one more thing to do before I drove out. I had forwarded everything to my attorney months ago, but there was one step I had been deliberate about timing. My brother's business was registered with my address, and the registered agent designation still had my name on it. Changing that required notifying the Ohio Secretary of State, which I had already prepared paperwork for, and it also meant the business's legal correspondence would stop coming to me and start going directly to him. But there was something else. Because I work in forensic accounting, and because I had spent 4 years watching money move in ways it shouldn't, I had also noticed while organizing my documentation folder that 2 of the transfers I had made to my brother in the past year had originated from a joint account my mother and I had shared briefly when I first moved to Columbus and never fully closed. The account was technically still open. My mother had made 2 small transfers out of it in the past 18 months that I had not authorized and had not noticed until I was going line by line through everything. They were not large amounts, $112, $78, but they were unauthorized transfers from an account with my name on it. I reported the account irregularities to the bank's fraud department. I closed my access, which flagged the account for review. I did not call my mother to tell her. I learned later from my sister, who called me 3 weeks after I had already arrived in Denver and was unpacking boxes in an apartment that smelled like fresh paint and someone else's life, that my mother had been contacted by the bank, that there had been a conversation, that the account had been closed and the matter referred for further review. My sister's voice when she told me this was careful. She wasn't angry exactly, she was something more like stunned. She said, "Did you know this was going to happen?" I told her I had reported what I found. I told her I was sorry, things were hard right now. I told her I loved her and that she could call me whenever she'd. She asked if I was okay. I looked out the window of my new apartment. The light in Denver is different than the light in Ohio. I don't know how to explain it except to say it comes in sideways in the afternoon and makes everything look slightly more deliberate than it is. I told her I was okay. I think I was telling the truth. I have not spoken to my mother since the morning I told her I was leaving. I have not spoken to my brother at all. My sister texts me sometimes, small things, a photo of the dog, a complaint about traffic. I text back. We are building something careful and small and I think it might hold. I still have the folder on my computer. I have not deleted it. Not because I'm waiting to use it, but because I looked at it for a long time before I moved and it reminded me of something I needed to remember. I did not imagine this. It happened. The numbers are right there. Some people ask, when they hear stories like this, what they would have done differently. Whether I should have said something sooner. Whether I should have drawn a line before $22,000. Whether I should have just paid the supplier and kept the peace. I used to ask myself those things too. I spent a lot of years in the space between what I knew and what I could bring myself to do about it. That space is quieter than people think. It's not dramatic. It's just Tuesday mornings in parking garages, coffee going cold, listening to a voicemail from the woman who raised you, and realizing that love and accountability are not the same thing, and that the people who taught you to confuse them are not always going to be the ones who help you untangle it. I drove out of Columbus on a Saturday. The movers had already left with everything. My car had 4 boxes in the back seat and a plant on the passenger floor that I had refused to let anyone else transport. I had a full tank of gas and a playlist I had been building for weeks without letting myself think too hard about why. I did not stop to say goodbye. There was no one left to say it to who would have received it the way I meant it. Somewhere past Indianapolis, I pulled off for gas and stood in the cold for a minute outside the car, watching some easeabouts move on the highway, places that makes you feel briefly, strangely free. Not happy, exactly. Not sad. Just present. Just here. I got back in the car and kept driving. The plant made it to Denver in perfect shape. It's sitting on my windowsill now in the sideways afternoon light. I water it every few days. It's doing fine, so am I.